Welcome to Gaia's Calling, where stories ignite your spirit and the earth whispers her secrets. I'm Brad Swift, a write-on-purpose author of eco-fiction and nonfiction, inviting you to become an eco-guardian. Together, let's explore the wonders of our world and take action to protect them. Listen closely. Gaia is calling. And today's call here in the new year of 2026, as we continue the four great truths, living through the Polycrisis. This is part 2 of a 3-part one cause reflection. And we're calling this The Great Turning Begins at Home. How the four great truths can change everything, starting with how we live, love, and belong. So I want to start with a bit of an author's note here. I called an audible over the holidays, feeling like we could all use a break from dealing with this most challenging topic, the Polycrisis. And here we are in the new year of 2026, which could, according to many experts, be a make or break year. So, well, let's dig in. Once you stop trying to outrun the Polycrisis, you start asking a different kind of question. What does a good life look like now? Now, what I mean by outrun, I mean all the ways that we try, often unconsciously, to escape what we sense is really happening around us. Denying the seriousness of it, or minimizing it, or staying so busy we don't have time to feel it, or doom scrolling until we're numb, or perhaps freezing in place because the scale of it just feels too big to face, or pinning our hopes on some distant rescue, technology, political, economic, so we don't have to change how we live today. All of these are understandable human responses. They're not moral failures. They're coping strategies in a world that's asking more of us than we were prepared for. But eventually, exhaustion sets in. The running, it just doesn't work. The distractions lose their power. And in that quiet moment, sometimes gentle, sometimes forced, we begin to wonder whether the real work isn't escaping the Polycrisis at all, but instead learning how to live inside it with integrity, care, and coherence. And that's where the four great truths come in. At least it has been for me, and I invite you to consider that as well. In one cause, I describe them as an alternative worldview to the four great untruths that has brought us to the brink. But they're more than just ideas. They're a lived orientation, a different way of standing in the world. Where the old story told us we are separate, that more is always better, that Earth's resources are limitless, and that technology will save us, the four great truths offer something quieter and sturdier. They remind us that we are interconnected, that sufficiency is possible, that reciprocity is how life actually works, and that stewardship, not domination, is our true role. This shift isn't abstract. It doesn't live in policy papers or distant futures. It shows up in how we live, love, and belong, especially close to home. Regeneration, as I've come to see it, is relational and local and embodied. It begins not with grand plans to save the world, but with small, grounded choices that restore right relationship. The land beneath our feet, with the people we share our lives with, and with the future generations we will inherit once we leave behind. The future generations who will inherit what we leave behind. That's why collapse, as frightening as it is, can also function as an invitation, not to panic, but to maturity. Not just to grieve what's breaking down, but to grow into what's being asked for us now. For Anne and me, the loving homestead has become a kind of living laboratory for this inquiry. Not a solutionist fantasy or a claim that we figured anything out, but a place to practice living differently, more attentively, more humbly, more in rhythm with life. It's where the four great truths stop being concepts and start becoming habits, conversations, and sometimes uncomfortable mirrors. So let's spend a few minutes delving into the four great truths a bit more. And after this, I'll be heading out to work in the loving homestead, getting some seeds started here in January for spring. But let's first look at the four great truths. Interconnectedness. It shows up for me most clearly in family and place. Living closer to the land has made it impossible to pretend that we're separate from soil health, from weather patterns, from the creatures who share this space, or from one another. When I'm gardening with Logan or watching Piper toddle around the yard with curiosity and wonder, interconnectedness isn't an idea. It's a felt sense. Their well-being is bound up with the choices we make now. So is the health of the land that feeds us. Community, too, starts to feel less optional and more essential. Conversations with neighbors, shared concerns, shared meals, those become threads in a larger web we're relearning how to tend. And sufficiency. Well, it's been one of the most challenging truths to live into, precisely because our culture trained us so well in more. More productivity, more output, more efficiency, more stuff. Stepping off that treadmill isn't dramatic. It's often subtle and it's ongoing. It looks like asking again and again, what is enough here? Enough work for today, enough growth for this season, enough plans, enough striving. In our household, sufficiency has meant simplifying, slowing down, and letting go of the quiet guilt that says we should always be doing more. And it's been surprisingly freeing, and yes, surprisingly difficult, to trust that there really is enough when we start racing past it. Then we got reciprocity. It has deepened my relationship with the earth itself. Gardening, food forests, basement growing through the winter, these aren't just projects, they're exchanges. The soil gives and we give back. We compost. We pay attention. We learn. And yes, we fail. And then we try again. The same is true in human relationships. Reciprocity reminds me that giving and receiving are not opposite. Accepting help, listening deeply, allowing others to contribute. These are as much a part of regenerative life as offering time, care, and effort in return. And then there's stewardship, which feels increasingly like a calling into elderhood. Not elderhood as age or authority, but as responsibility across time, caring for what we didn't create, making decisions with Logan and Piper in mind, and their children, even when they're not in the room, or maybe not even born yet. Supporting Amber and Justin, not just as parents, but as partners in navigating an uncertain future. Stewardship reframes the question from what can I get to what am I here to care for? And that changes everything. Living this way hasn't made life simpler in the sense of being easier, but it has made it clearer. The emotional arc for me has moved from sobriety, seeing things as they are, into grounding, a sense of belonging, and moments of quiet joy that feel earned rather than manufactured. Joy that comes not from distraction, but from alignment. The great turning, if it's real at all, doesn't begin in conference halls or sweeping declarations. It begins at home. It's how we choose to spend our time, in what we grow, in how we speak to one another, in whether we let collapse harden us into fear or soften us into care. Living this way doesn't make us saints or saviors. It makes us something far more needed right now. Adults, willing to grow up together. In the final piece of this series, I want to look directly at what this moment asks of us across generations, how we love, guide, and show up for the young ones who are already sensing that the world they're inheriting will be different from the one we were promised. Because in the end, the quiet question isn't just how we live through the Polycrisis, but who we become while doing so. And in 2026, how about let's connect here in Substack? I'll be moving into my third year of publishing here in Substack. It's become an important part of my online home. Just one thing that's been missing for me: more direct communication with you, my dear readers and subscribers. So this year, how about we change that? Here are a couple ways: the comment button and the chat button. How has this series landed for you? Do you agree that we're in such a time or not? If so, what ways are you finding to cope with this time? And most important of all, how may I be of service to you this year, 2026?